Meet Jimmy Grimble. This boy is obsessed with football, and his dream is to become a star in the sport. He's got some talent, but he's also too shy. If there's anyone watching, his skills disappear. His self-encouragement in the mirror doesn't help much, and that's not his only problem. His mother Donna has a new boyfriend, and that's usually bad news. This one is a biker named Johnny, a classy person who tells everyone how much he paid for the bike. Worse than that, he's also that kind of future parent who's determined to bond with you no matter what. Jimmy is forced to play ball with him before enduring a totally random kung fu lesson. Donna and Johnny go inside for a cup of tea. While Jimmy is glad to see that guy gone, he knows what that cup of tea really means. The only thing that makes him smile is a mischievous neighbor who decides to target the precious bike. After Johnny leaves, Donna says Johnny is a nice guy, and he makes her laugh. It's almost like she's apologizing. Anyway, time for the next nightmare. Jimmy approaches the school gate as if he was about to rob it or something, and he has a good reason to be so careful. He's a fan of Manchester City, while everyone at Greenock High School loves Manchester United, and these are the main bullies to avoid: Gordon Burley, the ladies' favorite, and his friend Psycho. Good news is that Jimmy is not the only miserable person around. Mr. Whirl is a depressed PE teacher who is constantly disrespected by the students. When the new girl smiles at Jimmy, he almost believes his luck might turn, but that's when the bullies catch him off guard and come after him. Jimmy is a fast little guy, but he can't outrun them forever. So he tries to look for somewhere to hide, which is a mistake because he gets cornered. But don't worry, they just want to wash his school act, just not with water. Exactly. From the bathroom window where he's hiding to smoke, Mr. Whirl watches the scene with the same soulless expression he lives his life. A notice about school's cup team trials makes Jimmy forget about all of it in a second. Trying to avoid performance issues while also cutting down the competition, he discreetly hides the notice from the rest of the students. Maybe not so discreetly. At the trials, we meet Casper Hagens, also known as the Cat, and Elvis, a heavy smoker midfielder. We also see that little trick with the bulletin board didn't work at all. A bunch of other boys show up, including Gordon and Psycho. Meanwhile, the school council is discussing the construction of a sports center. Many creative ways to raise money are mentioned, but no one sounds very optimistic. The meeting is interrupted by a possible investor. Ken Burley is a rude guy, but he comes with a nice offer. If they manage to take the school team to the Cup's final, he'll donate $90,000. At the football field, no one knows yet that the stakes are much higher now. Jimmy is trying to conquer his stage fright, but that's hard to do when your nemesis is showing off so successfully. That's when Coach Whirl disallows a goal and Gordon tells him to go to hell. In a rare display of self-respect, Whirl says he's no longer on the team, but that decision won't hold for much long. Gordon is not only essential for the team to get to the finals, he is Ken Burley's son. Once again, Whirl is forced to swallow what's left of his pride. Gordon is back on the team as if nothing had happened. Trying to change the subject, the headmaster asks who they're up against on the first round. Whirl says it's Wreckingham. On his way home, Jimmy is celebrating in a weird way when the sound of applause makes him stop. It's the new girl. She says she likes his underwear, which makes him run away in horror. At Donna's work, he tries to tell her about making the team, but she's too busy and her boss comes by to say she'll be taking the night shift as well. Donna looks just miserable, so Jimmy walks home in the rain. And this awful day still has a lot in store for the poor boy. Gordon and Psycho ambush him in a dark alley. Jimmy only escapes them because an old woman helps him hide. Her name is Alice. She takes him to a shady basement filled with all kinds of junk. Jimmy's starting to wonder if this was a good idea, but he can still hear Gordon taunting him upstairs. And there's something else too. A pair of shoes hanging right at eye level makes him fantasize a crowd cheering him on. Alice says he can have them. She has seen him play ball in the street before. Still uneasy around the stranger, Jimmy tries to decline the offer, but she insists that he must take the boots because they're special, almost like magic. He accepts the gift to shut her up, but throws it into the first dumpster he sees. Later on, Jimmy sees someone at his door talking to Donna. It's her ex-boyfriend Harry, who once made Donna truly happy. He seemed to care about both of them, and it was him who inspired the love of Manchester City into Jimmy. They went to so many games together that even blind Bob could tell it who they were. Then one day his wife came knocking on the door, and the illusion was over. Now he's asking Donna if she met someone else. She refuses to answer, shutting the door in his face. He takes it out on the flowers. Seeing Jimmy, he tries to start a conversation, but the boy still resents him a lot. In the morning, the new girl is facing a group of bullies. They're mocking her style and calling her a vampire. She explains that she is actually a pugilist. As they don't know what it means, she gives them a demonstration. Watching from a corner, Jimmy concludes he's in love. Now back to his own bullies. No way around them this time since they're all in the same team. It's their first match today, and they're about to leave when Gordon throws Jimmy's boots into the garbage truck. What's he gonna do now? While the headmaster is begging Ken Burley not to humiliate in front of the kids, Jimmy is running like a madman to get the magic boots in that dumpster. At the news that the team sub had tragically lost his boots, Wirral is even more pessimistic. Luckily, his ride is as unfailing as his spirit. Jimmy makes it to the van under applause. When they get to Wreckingham, Wirral tries to put Elvis as striker, but Gordon disagrees. With his usual arrogance, Jimmy is happy to be a sub considering the revolting spectacle before his eyes. And it gets even worse when Greenock scores a goal. The Wreckingham boys seem to take this kind of thing personally. When Wirral points out soccer is not a combat sport, the referee tells him to back off, so he gets back to his reading. A few minutes into the second half, Gordon is hit right in his crown jewels. Wirral calmly tells Jimmy that he's on. Big moment of truth now. The Wreckingham are coming his way like possessed mammoths. All the way across the field, their goalkeeper takes a phone call. Jimmy kicks the ball way over that whole group of maniacs and, to their shock, scores his first goal. Even Wirral stops reading to watch, and the prowess gives his face the rare visit of a smile. Much more grateful now, Jimmy decides to see Alice again and thank her. She says those boots belong to Robbie Brewer, a former player for Man City, but the name doesn't ring a bell, and it's not listed as a former player. Just when things are starting to look better, Johnny Two Dogs arrives, and this time he's not just visiting. In fact, he proudly refers to himself as Jimmy's new dad. At least Sarah, the pugilist, is still there, and she's heard about his moment of glory. A bit shocked to learn that she's not into soccer, he wants to know what she likes then. She takes him to a real pugilist's grave to explain her fascination with the sport. Jimmy is a bit uneasy to hang at such a place. Maybe she is a vampire after all, but Sarah shows him that you can learn a lot from the tombstones and their stories. A few days later, Jimmy wants to see a City game. Donna tells Johnny to take him and gives them some money. But before they can grab their snacks, a pair of thugs show up and take the money. They say they're coming for the rest soon, or they'll take the bike. Jimmy asks why he didn't kung fu those guys, and Johnny says they weren't prepared for him. At school, Jimmy invites Sarah on an investigative trip to Main Road. The omnipresent Gordon is coming with his girl, and he laughs at the idea of Jimmy on a date. He's proved wrong right there, and then with a stolen kiss. But Jimmy goes mute when they start asking about it, and Sarah gets annoyed. Jimmy ends up heading to the stadium by himself. The janitor points him to a man's house nearby. He might know something about Robbie Brewer because he's an expert in Manchester City. Jimmy's jaw drops when his very own Mr. Wirral opens the door. He's never heard of a Robbie Brewer either, but that no longer matters. Jimmy finds out that Wirral himself was a striker for Manchester City for 2 years. Unable to hide his shock, Jimmy can't help but wonder what the hell happened. Wirral says that's exactly what happened. How does he expect a person to embody a PE teacher after having experienced that kind of glory? Round 2 comes and off they go to Northmoor, a fancy school whose team has won the cup a few times. Ken Burley is kind enough to come along, and he even helps out with some tactics, which pretty much consists of bullying kids into letting his son have the ball. So first half is all but a tragedy. Then Jimmy meets a man named Pete Drake, who used to be United's goalkeeper. As he says he played once against City, Jimmy takes him to Wirral. Their conversation reveals the sensational secret to everyone, and the boys immediately ditch Burley's advice and reinstate Wirral as their coach. That does the trick. Nothing brings life back into a teacher as a chance to yell, and that's how they beat the almighty Northmoor. Next one is Nordale, then Gainsborough, and they all succumb the magical boots one by one. Coming home one day, Wirral's van finally breathes its last. Jimmy figures it can't hurt to try some magic. Although resurrecting that vehicle may be beyond any kind of sorcery, a miracle does come in the form of Harry Thomas removal and storage truck. And yes, it's that Harry. While Psycho and Elvis are messing with all the stuff in the back, Jimmy wastes no time to tell Harry that his coach once played for City. Harry is also a huge fan, but Wirral seems strangely actually uneasy at the stardom. After they're dropped off, Harry makes a mysterious comment about a certain match. He says he was there, and it didn't look like what people said. Meanwhile, at the Night Owl, Donna's working the night shift again. Her boss, Colin, already had a few, and now he's about to show his true colors, which happen to be very, very ugly. Luckily, those kicking skills seem to run in the family. Harry is waiting for her outside with Jimmy. He drives her home and gets verbally attacked by Johnny, always playing tough guy at the wrong time. He says Donna is his fiancée, and this is his family now. Harry leaves in a mixture of sorrow and disgust. Come semifinals, and a United Scout shows up. Burley tries to pitch his son to the man, but he says Jimmy Grimble is the one he's watching. Greenock wins this match too, and for the second time in history, they'll be in the finals at Main Road. Jimmy says the only person who'd understand what that means to him is Harry. And speaking of him, it turns out that his wife is having an affair of her own. They both figure this isn't working anymore. Jimmy is nearby, coming to tell him the news. He mistakes their goodbye hug for something else, so he decides to turn around, but only to find out he has nowhere to go. As Donna is starting a new business, their house is filled with customers and Johnny is hiding from them in Jimmy's room. So the boy turns to Alice once again. They talk about Robbie Brewer and how those boots helped him. Alice says she lost touch with him. She didn't want to tell him he was getting sick, and he found out anyway. She didn't mean to lie, but he was angry at her. The big day comes under snow. As Jimmy walks to the stadium, he sees they're tearing down those old buildings. He tries to warn them about Alice, but then he sees some footsteps in the snow and follows them. He finds his best friend covered in snow. Alice didn't survive the freezing cold last night. At Main Road, Jimmy is received with applause by his teammates, but none of this matters now that the only person who helped him get here is gone. Back at his home, Donna finally tells Johnny she hates bikes. She'll take the bus to Main Road and meet him there. The minute she walks away, Johnny meets a pretty blonde and invites her upstairs. Checking her wallet, Donna decides to come back home, furious to learn Johnny's been stealing from her. Another confrontation is going on in the men's room at the stadium. Ken Burley is rethinking his generous offer. The headmaster reminds him that their deal was $90K if they reached the finals. No one said they had to win. Ken remembers that differently, but he's willing to bargain. So the headmaster has a word in private with Whirl and tells him they must bench Jimmy. Ken wants his son to have no competition while the scout is watching. Having been carefully growing himself a spine over these past weeks, Whirl says he can tell the boy himself. In the locker room, of course, with the whole team present, Psycho and the cat are the first ones to stand up and announce they refuse to play without Jimmy. Then everyone else but Gordon does the same. Whirl points out what an amazing spotlight he'll have now in a one-man team. In a desperate attempt to salvage his pride, the headmaster tells Ken to back off and to hell with that sports center. But sadly, little Gordon did not fall far from the tree. He takes the magic boots when Jimmy is not looking and throws them in the river. Whirl gives him a new pair out of his pocket right before Donna arrives, saying that Johnny is out of the picture now. But none of this can cheer the boy up. He's back to old Jimmy now, just losing one thing after another. Heading to the bleachers, Donna sees someone who would never miss Jimmy's Main Road debut. Harry tells her that he left his wife, and Donna has to admit that's a real nice timing. When the match begins, even the least superstitious would say the magic was indeed in the boots. Jimmy's performance is beyond horrible. Gordon gets to shine a little, but not enough to save the team. Huntingdon High scores 2 goals in the first half, and everyone is disappointed. Jimmy is booed out of the field at halftime. Harry is there to tell him he must forget about those boots. We make our own luck. Then Whirl joins them to talk about what happened when he decided to rely on something other than himself. A shot of vodka for good luck before a match. That went from a funny tradition to a nasty habit that kept getting worse until he took down a player with way too much force. That man barely walked again, let alone play soccer. That was all very touching and generous to share, but Whirl gave up the big secret for nothing. Jimmy is not convinced at all. He still believes in the magic boots that once belonged to Robbie Brewer. When Harry hears that name, he tells Whirl to hold on for a sec. They'll be right back. He takes Jimmy to meet Robbie Brewer, aka Blind Bob, who used to be the Manchester City mascot, but never an actual player. He says it took a long time to forgive his mother because she didn't tell him he was getting blind. Alice was a liar with good intentions. That's why she made up that story about the boots, but the magic was never in them. Second half welcomes a very different Jimmy Grimble, who scores a goal right away. Gordon soon follows after, and then the last-minute goal is a joint effort between Jimmy's foot and Gordon's face, cheered by the whole team and carried on their shoulders. Jimmy even gets to turn down the Manchester United offer, since there was also a Man City scout in the crowd, and this is the end. This was a recap of the 2000 movie. There is only one Jimmy Grimble by Impact Pictures, starring Louis Mackenzie and Robert Carlyle. So what parts of this story did you like best? And which character is your favorite? Let us know in the comments below with #CinemaRecap. Until next time.